Hi, everybody. For this episode, we're joined by Megan Cederberg from New Mexico in the United States. Megan works at the Chaves County CASA and is transitioning into a new role as their social venturist. Megan loves the outdoors and is known to be bold and assertive, and I think you'll find her to be very authentic. Megan, thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to have you here, and I'm so eager to learn about you. And I also want to know more about this social venturist thing, because I know the title is still being massaged a little bit, and you're evolving into this role. But I would like to understand what a social venturist means and understand that a little bit better. I'm not real familiar with the term, but I do know of like venture capitalist, and I think of venture capitalists are wealthy people who invest in startups and hope that they're going to get a return. And I'm wondering if you guys are kind of seeing it along that same line. Like, are you thinking like if you make some social investments in things that you'll see dividends in the betterment of people's lives or your community? Just how do you see what a social venturist would do or be?
I thought that was so beautifully said. And I love that you put that perspective out there for me to even hear it again or, kind of look at it like that. But I think social venturist is, and I'm going to give a lot of credit to the people that have inspired me in my life. And one of those things is we call it spices. And so really what you're saying is spot on. So, it has a social aspect, it has a physical aspect, it has an intellectual aspect, it has a creative aspect, and it has an emotional aspect and a spiritual aspect. So we do activities that are going to encompass all of those things, maybe not in one session, but throughout the year of engaging with our youth. So some of the highlights of that program are going to be, for me, it's very much so biking, and we'll talk more about that a little bit, but we have 8 bikes that we take our kiddos out on adventures on our trails here in Roswell. Paddle boards, we have a bottomless lakes here that fits really perfect. It's a very beautiful space. The water is very clean. And it is, we are investing in them having a new experience, and hopefully that there is a dividend, which they find their community to be beautiful, the place that they live to be beautiful, and that will heighten their empowerment to be happy in the spaces that they're in and see great things. We also do disc golfing, because we have disc golf courses here, which is phenomenal in the physical sense, but also in the emotional sense. And it really can become a part of your spiritual sense of, self-managing, regulation of thoughts and, meditation of time and all these different things. But during the school years, we only have an hour allotted with each of these kiddos. So it's a group setting, but we try to really expand. So this year, I'll talk about last year because it was the first year. It really was the startup of that program. We did a haunted house, which was super fun. We spent a whole month of every week doing something in regards to the haunted house. We did a lot of Thanksgiving prep. We did Day of the Dead was really huge because we had a lot of our kiddos that had family members pass away. So it was a really neat experience to bring culture and creativity into it, and then emotional into it, and then spiritual as well. But to be able to share that time together and express, how we can honor people that we love. And then this year, tell me. This year we're doing skateboarding. We're doing a wide variety of things. And Day of the Dead again. This year we're revamping and doing Day of the Dead really big. There's a lot there.
That's great. What a nice way to think about the work you're doing. Is I often talk about the social and economic value that youth workers bring to their community and to their state and to, I guess, society in general. And to describe it as like a social venturist is really a neat spin on that. And the way you described all those different aspects of it is really cool. But I also want to know a little bit about you, Megan. I want to kind of learn your story and understand how you got to be at this point in your life where you're even talking about social venturism. What was your upbringing like, Megan? Did you come from a big family, or can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Sure. I come from a mixed family. So 2 families that just, boom, we joined together. I have step siblings that aren't blood siblings, and I have blood siblings that are, born and raised with me. And we all, I would kind of what we talked about a little bit, but I would call us kind of a trauma bunch. We all had our own traumas when we met together. And so we grew up, coping through those traumas, experiencing those traumas, but also like really connecting to one another. I like to my sister's a big part of my life. Her name is Bianca. And she's really beautiful. And she really was my heart growing up in the way that we spent so much time together. We had so much fun together. And we were very social kids. We went to our neighbors' houses a lot and spent a lot of time in the neighborhood, biking, walking, whatever that is, and really got to know a lot of people. And what's beautiful is people were really like open to us and really vibrant around us as well. And a big highlight for me is my neighbor, Joan. She was amazing. The first time I met her was kind of crazy. Can I get into like details of like, it can be a little bit gory or like a little bit weird? Can it get weird?
Sure. It's your episode. Yeah, go ahead.
So the first time I met,
it sounds like it's relevant to the story of who you are. Yeah,
for sure. When I first met her, I had just gotten my hair cut completely off, like butched. And my sister and I went over there, and she sat me on her lap, and she was like, "Hi, how are you today? You got your hair cut?" And I said, "Yeah, I have headlight." And I was like five or so. And I said, "Yeah, I had headlights, so I had to get it all cut off. And my dad died." And she was like shocked, like didn't know how to handle it, didn't know how to process this little 5-year-old saying these things to her. And she was like, "Do you want a cookie? Can I get you a cookie?" And her husband was like, "Don't do it. Don't do it. They're like raccoons. They're going to come back." And that's true. It was very true. And so my sister and I kept coming back just every day, just coming over. She would come home from work and we'd just know she was there. And we would just say, hello, come play with us, come be with us, and eventually she had to move us down to 1 day a week. She was like, "Y'all have to have just 1 day a week with me." And so we set a Joan day, and they called us the raccoons our entire childhood. And so just really, she engaged in us. She showed us gardening. She showed us having pets. She took us on family camping trips. She really just opened her life to us. And as much as I was like a chaotic kid, which I'm still a chaotic adult, she just let me be me and just totally supported me in all of my craziness and sometimes my anger. She was totally supportive of me, but she showed me all of these outlets that I could have to express myself and to be happy, and to even be mad and be doing those things was fine too with her. But fully accepting, fully loving, and just really amazing to us as kids. And I really give a lot of my credit of where I am at today. When I'm working with youth, when I'm doing fun things, if I go down in my mood or I get down in my level, I really think to myself, I'm like, what would Joan have done for me in this season? And it's love. She would have totally been like, "Let's go garden," or "Let's, do something while you're expressing yourself."
You talked about being a trauma bunch, and you also kind of put in there that your father died. How did your dad die? And you were 5 when he died?
So I was actually really little. I was probably like 1 when my dad died. It impacted my siblings more because my brother was 8. My dad actually killed himself, shot himself on the phone while talking to my mom. So that was really hard for her, I think, more than any of us kids, and really hard on my brother. My mom is actually Native American and my dad was German. And so my mom had a lot of she grew up on the reservation. She had a lot of that family in support of her. But I think for her, she lost a lot of her ability to connect after that. And so, yeah, that's that.
Yeah. I can see that would create a ton of trauma. I'm so sorry to hear that. And then sounds like your mom got remarried, and there was trauma on that side of the family too. What was the trauma they were experiencing and going through that turned you into the trauma bunch?
Right. So my other side of the family, they had an alcoholic mother. And as loving and kind as she was, she still had an addiction, and there was still a lot of being left alone or managing time when they were kids. And, my oldest sibling on that side, she was really what we call parentified. And she took really good care of her brother. And but she was young, and she had an older sister who actually passed away at 18. So she had experienced one of the loves of her life pass away when she was younger. And just kind of experiencing the situation with her parents yeah, that's that side of the family.
Wow. And are your mom and your stepdad, are they still together? And does your family see each other much, or you kind of all gone your own way?
So they are still together. And I will say, I think a mixture, a little bit of both. I lived all the way in New Mexico. So my family's from Wisconsin, and I moved very far away when I hit like 19. Okay. And I thought it was really great for my process in life and healing. But some of my siblings stayed home in Wisconsin. My closest sister became a flight attendant, so she started traveling the world. And one of my brothers moved to Kansas. So in a sense, we kind of like branched out. But in the other sense, we still connected through, I mean, thank God for technology. We still connected through phone calls. I think we did disconnect a lot in the process of healing. Just because everybody chose to handle it a very different way, I think. One of my brothers actually chose, and I don't know, I don't want to speak for him in any sense, but he definitely had a lot of like wrong moves, and addiction really set into his life. And thank God, praise the Lord, he's like a year sober now, so he's doing really well. But he definitely got disconnected from us as a family. And I think with him, he had a lot harder time coping through a lot of our childhood. And so in that sense, he got separated more because he was coping in such a way that we were like, well, we don't comprehend how you're coping, or, whatever that may be. And so, yeah, I still talk to all of my siblings. And I do go home to see my parents. I wouldn't say I'm the closest with my mom, but I would say I still chit chat with her occasionally. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody handles trauma so differently, right? And
Right.
There's no right way or wrong way to handle it, as long as it helps you move forward and come to some sort of healing space.
Right.
It sounds like for you, starting off on your own again in a state pretty far away from Wisconsin was a good move for you. Can you talk not just the logistics about why you moved there, but how was that good for you? How did that space and kind of starting over, that aspect of it, how did that help you kind of cope with the trauma that you experienced growing up?
Right. For me, it was change was really a challenge for me. And I think it really put my focus on this change and where am I going to go as an adult and what am I going to be? I also think I had a lot of anger. So I left Wisconsin in a space that I was still pretty mad at everybody for what had happened and how it was, playing out. And I felt like me leaving was really great because I didn't have to communicate I was angry. I got to have I got to have people around me that didn't really know my childhood, but were willing to learn my life. And so I got to almost get therapy by friendships that were new. And so being able to express myself with people that weren't my family, I think that helped me a lot. And just being met with such an open community. Roswell is a very beautiful space, especially for an entrepreneur and especially for a creative mind. If you have visions of beautiful things for the community, people jump in. And so I think for me, I'm naturally just out there. I'm naturally like, hi neighbor or whatever, and so people were really open. And my husband is kind of the same way. We're very vibrant in the way that we like to do things and we like to connect. And so, both of us really just had these people that just stepped into our lives that were, feeding where we were at. And so I think, yeah. And then my husband's family is really beautiful. So my husband's family, even when I met him in high school, and started dating him in high school, his family was super, super supportive of me and really helped me to understand that I have what it takes to keep moving and I have a beautiful soul. And they were very crucial in supporting us as we moved and they came and visited us and just, there was so much support for me that it made it a lot easier to really grow through it. And then CASA. I very shortly after stepped into my role at CASA and just being able to engage with all of these other little kids that, have their own stories, that have their own things going on, and just really being able to be my neighbor Joan with them and love them. And I think that's healing in itself too,
I agree with that. And it sounds like you made a wise decision. And it sounds like you not only are healing from all those experiences you had as a young person, you're taking them and using them to your advantage to help other people. And I think that's unbelievably cool. We do have to take a short break. When we come back, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about Joan and then talk about some of the other things that you've done there. So we'll be right back. Megan, right before the break, I said I wanted to ask you a little bit more about Joan, your neighbor, who was very supportive of you at a very early age, even though you were like a raccoon and kept going back and getting cookies.
Heck yeah.
She sounds like a wonderful person. And I wonder, have you ever thought about the fact that you are kind of doing the same thing Joan did for you, but in a more structured, kind of meaningful, professional sort of way, rather than being that just altruistic, caring neighbor? You devoted your career into giving back and helping. And I think if you get young people to be like raccoons and keep coming back to your program and keep engaging, that's kind of what you're trying to do. Have you ever thought about that connection there?
For sure. And I think I'm 100% grateful that I get paid to do it. I don't know how Joan did it all those years without being paid to do it, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful how you've developed that. Despite the trauma, despite the other things that you've got going on, you are committed to helping other people, and you're looking for creative ways, new ways, ways to reach out, and whatever you can do to connect and build those relationships with young people. That's what you're working on. And they're designing a whole program for you to think of creative ways to do that. And I know you are kind of a creative person. So we talked about social venturist, but you're also kind of an entrepreneur. Like you've started a bike shop, and now some of those bikes are directly involved in the CASA program. How did you and your husband decide that starting a bike shop is going to be good for you? And how is that connected then to CASA?
Right. I think they're always connected. I was in a place at CASA where I needed to be able to express myself. And it may be a little off topic, but I'll kind of go back to when my neighbor Joan, she moved away from us at a certain point in our lives. And it really correlates to my job title too. We don't have our kids forever. They eventually move forward and they eventually go and live different lives. And I remember being very panicked about that. What am I going to do without my neighbor? And I had a bike. And so I biked everywhere. I walked everywhere. I just was outside all the time. And I think in my place at CASA, I was feeling like I'm not able to live to my full potential in the way that I can give back to my kids or the community that I'm working with. And I think in that desperate moment, I was like, hey, Daniel and my husband Daniel had been a barista, because that's where we started, is at Stellar Coffee Co. in Roswell, which is a very big part of the connection. I mean, I'll tell you, everything's very connected for me. And so, and Ann Baker, she owns Stellar Coffee Co. and she's like my Carrie Lee. So Carrie Lee Cloutier is the Costa side of things, and Ann Baker is the Stellar Coffee Co. And these are all Joan figures. These are all people who are very beautiful and loving to those around them. And I think in that desperate moment of, I need to be authentically myself, I need to be able to take these kids out and really give them what I was given and what I was blessed with. I came to Ann and I said, look, this ain't working for me. Can you let me open a bike shop? And I kind of talked to Daniel about it, but I have to work with him. I have to like throw the idea out there and kind of make it like maybe this could be something. And Daniel was really ready to stop being a barista. He was done working in coffee for a minute. And so he was like, yeah, I really could be a bike mechanic. And Daniel's dreams are to tour guide. He really wants to, and that's where our missions really align, is he wants to take people out into nature too. And so Anne was like, immediately she said, yes, you can start a bike shop. I have a little bit of like a 20 by 20 space in the back for you if you want to do that. And so we got started. We redid her floors. We built a counter. And then we started it right as COVID started. So our opening was like, boom. It was January 2019 is when we opened. And so in that year, bike sales peaked 200% because subways were being shut down and people needed to bike. That was the solution was, hey, I can't use public transportation. I'm going to get a bike. So everybody was buying bikes. And it really boosted our business and it really helped us. And we were able to expand. And then through that expansion, and even on the CASA side of things, nonprofits boomed because all these grants were available during COVID. All of these federal foundations were like, you got to get this money out of here. And Carrie Lee was able to get such a ginormous grant that covered bikes, a coffee truck. And that's where the entrepreneur side jumps in. So we were able to start a coffee truck program where Daniel, being a barista all his life, being a coffee shop person all his life, and me jumping in there, we were able to start this program that now gives kids the ability to work, the ability to learn hands-on life skills and to be connected to counselors, mental health, and all of it, all in your workplace. So, and they're all very close. So the hub of Casa, Stellar, and Moonrock, we're all within 3 blocks of each other. So that's a lot.
Wow. It is all connected. And I can see why they're developing this title for you called social venturist. You just have these ideas. You have these ideas all the time, don't you? New ideas about things you could do to make situations better, engage young people more. That's just kind of how your brain works, right? It's always going, isn't it?
I think so. Blessing and a curse.
Yeah, I can imagine. And how do you see it as a curse? I'm just curious about that. Is it just exhausting, or what is it that makes it kind of difficult sometimes?
I think the slowing down is very hard. And especially in our field, we're very much encouraged to self-care and to rest and to, and I'll get really personal with it. At the beginning of the satellite, there was so much going on, with the Adventure Time, with the satellite, and with also trying to get the programs that I was already doing, distributed to other people and try to help people get into that job. And I experienced, like not anxiety, but tightness of my body. And I had to, on Sundays, I would come home and my body was like, you're laying down all day. And so I had to learn the value of rest, because I don't like resting. It's not fun for me to just lay down. And so I think that's where the curse is that it's not very fun for me to be like laying down, and I really do need to lay down. So in the curse, it became a blessing through the curse because I learned how to rest and relax a lot during this season.
Yeah. In your work that you've done there and you've started these different ideas and you always have new things you'd like to be working on. Is there one thing you can think of that you're super proud of, that you got started, that you got going, that is flourishing? Anything that feels like it's been transformational?
I think all of it. I mean, I can't believe the bike shop. I can't believe how many walls we took apart to build the bike shop. And what's crazy too is I connected my CASA kids in that. So when we would need to tear down walls or paint walls or do whatever, I would invite CASA kids to come and they would help me tear down walls and they would help me, and so I think everything we've done has been transformational. Every problem we've experienced, I had to learn about propane. Really, I'm a social worker. Why do I got to learn about propane? Why do I got to learn about electrical? Why do I, all these things that I was like, why? But I took it on and I learned so much about communication with so many people in my community. And I think the biggest thing I would say I'm grateful for in the accomplishment side of it is the ability to realize that it's okay to be inspired and share your inspiration with other people. I was always very fearful that if I was too inspired out there and that maybe people would be like, well, you're just like gloating or you're just being cocky or whatever. And I just kind of really learned that my passion is inspiring and it transcends and it wavelengths out. So totally embrace it because you're desperate now. You got to get new tires. You got to get propane tanks. You just have to. So I think everything, all of it. And the paddle boards.
I think there's so much. I think your passion for doing this stuff is so apparent. And I know at the very beginning, I introduced that I think people would find you to be authentic. You're so real and you're so honest in the way you describe what you do. You often talk about kind of chaos, like your world is kind of chaotic because you're going so fast all the time. You're just diving into things head first. But I would like to ask you, and this is going to be a harder question. Okay. Are you ready for a little harder one?
I'm scared, but ready.
Okay. What do you think like your biggest fault is, or your biggest fear that you have about being a youth worker is? The other side of the coin. You have so much going on, but I know we all have a little self-doubt. We all have a little insecurities. I'm wondering, what are yours like?
One that is really apparent in my mind is I'm here in Roswell, New Mexico, and if none of you can see me on the podcast, if you decide not to watch the video or whatever, I have blonde hair, I have blue eyes, and I'm meeting all of these kids that are from such diversity. We have a very large Hispanic population, which I would give credit to all of them as I've been here, like Mexicans, Colombians, like I could give the whole list because it is very specific here. Like, hey, we're not all just Mexicans. Hey, we're not all just Colombians, or, there's a lot there. But we also have Filipino and there's just all this diversity here. And so I think for me, the biggest challenge is to say, I'm going to push through this initial meet and greet. So there's a lot of bias out there, and our kids are learning to be very biased, and I'm biased. So, when they first meet me, they're like, who is this white girl? And I think it's not my flaw, but I think that the biggest flaw that I can get is that I maybe fall into the trap of, you really aren't good enough. You have no cultural experience with these kids. You cannot relate to them. You're old now. And I think that my inner voice is my biggest downfall, hands down at times. All those words that you can say to yourself in a moment.
And I think we all have that imposter kind of syndrome at some level, right? And I think that you were so brave to talk about that, because that is a big thing. And I think a lot of youth workers feel that, especially when we're working with some young people who are living through just terrible situations, and we're trying to somehow have this audacity to believe we can play an important part and help them improve their circumstances. That takes, we all have those doubts. And for you to say that and to just be so bold and brave and authentic to come on and say it, I think is really cool. So here's a little easier question. So how do you define success when you're working with young people? What does that look like to Megan?
Okay, so this is a great one. I like this. When we talk about success, we also link it to an emotion. What do we feel? What is success supposed to feel like? What does accomplishment feel like? And this is where I love Google definitions. I love, we learn, we have a forensic interviewing program here too. And so a lot of us get the opportunity to go to that training. I would never be a forensic interviewer. Let me just say that. But you learn so much about how people define things differently on any word. And so we Google the definition of success. We Google the definition of accomplishment. And then I listen. What does it mean to you? When you hear that definition, what does it say to you? And I like to break it down to, like I said, feelings, but, what types of things in your life make you feel that feeling? And then we go from there. We build off of that, and we say, that's what success is to you, not my definition of success, but to me, my definition of success. Are you asking me that as well?
I think so. That was, that's what I was looking for, but I liked your other answer as well too.
I think success to me is, accomplishing something. I mean, really just, trying to do something and accomplishing it. And the middle parts, I think success is even failing and getting back up. I think success is challenging yourself and looking at yourself and saying, where could I be better? Or where did I do great? I think success is all about being able to reframe and being able to say, that there is something worthwhile here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Megan, I'm so grateful that you are doing what you're doing. You bring so much creativity and energy into this field. And I'm sure that your program is so much better as a result of all the things you think about, all the things you're willing to dive into, certainly are making an impact on young people. And regardless if you're the same culture as some of the young people you work with, I think people see you as authentic. And I know that's the secret. I think, at least I should say, I believe that's the secret to getting past racial differences is if we can just be real and be authentic and just say what we believe and not try to be artificial or superficial, but just be ourselves. And you, Megan, are yourself. You're so genuine. So thank you for being a guest on the podcast. It was great to get to know you.
I appreciate you. I think this has been such a great challenge to take on, and a beautiful reminder throughout my week, you got it.
Great. Before we go, Megan, what words of wisdom or inspiration would you like to leave with the listeners?
I say show up in the physical, and be open to what is going to come, what connections you might make, good or bad. I think, and if you aren't there mentally to begin with, that's okay. And over time, it will become a mental show up. But at least show up physically to these things in life that you are called to do.